Welcome to Innovate presents Entrepreneurs in Tech. Today we are delighted actually to have our guest Johannes Naylor. Johannes, thank you for joining us. And for our audience and our listeners and viewers who might not be familiar with you, is it possible you can just introduce yourself and give us just a little bit on who you are and what do you do before we dive into it and really get into the details?
Yeah, of course. It's awesome to have. It's awesome to finally be here. Like I said, I mean, you were telling me before this is the first episode, so I'm honored to be the first guest for it.
Yes,
So
indeed.
yeah,
Thank you.
I'm Johannes. I'm the founder of Tapped AI. Tapped is. I mean, we're going to go into a lot about what Tapped is, but the
Absolutely.
TLDR is we make it possible for any performer to be able to create their own world tour. My background is I've been in the music industry for about 5-ish years now, but before that, I have about like 10 to 15 years of technical experience. From college, I went to grad school for machine learning and published some papers on that. And getting out, did a lot of data engineering work, big on like ML and big data type projects. Got into the music industry by college friends, and then eventually professionally by working at Audius, and now with Tapped, I'm the technical co-founder for it.
Great. So you're more on the tech side, I understand. And
Absolutely.
you're young. When you said, "Hey, I only been in the music business 5 years, and been in the tech for 15 years," so I would assume you started when you're like 8, 9 years old, being in the tech
Absolutely, yeah,
business.
yeah. I mean, hey, like Lego's our thing. Yeah, I went pretty hardcore down that, and is even starting it like in middle school and whatnot. I used to think I was going to be a chemist, and so in middle school and
Huh.
early high school, I was making rockets, and I thought I wasn't. I couldn't decide on chemistry or physics. I eventually kind of started weeding off that when. I mean, if I don't know if you have a question for it down the line, so I won't spoil the story yet. But I blew up my backyard, and I kind of started weeding off of
Well, you know
weeding off
what?
of
I
chemistry and
mean,
rockets.
my next question is really take us back to your childhood. Like, how did the whole passion for being into the tech, being a rocket scientist,
Yeah.
I should say, being somebody who's, innovative and really focused and obsessed with technology, and how did you develop that to your later on in life with school? Like, what pushed that kind of vision and the curiosity?
Yep. I'm from the middle of nowhere, Virginia. I'm like really far out there. Like the county that I live in, or the county that my parents live in, has been invited to join West Virginia several times, and that's how rural it is. Um, and there's not a whole lot to do out here. And I'm a very active person. I'm always trying to like find something to do when I get bored. I'm very much so like, okay, I got to do something, got to do something, got to do something. Being in an environment in the suburbs in the middle of nowhere, Virginia, I just ended up getting into stuff, right? Like getting into, I would help a friend mount a mount a motor onto a bicycle, so he had a little motorcycle that he could drive around with. I the rockets is obviously kind of the big flashy one of making rockets and building experiments off of that. But even trying to do metalworking, my mom works at a hospital, so I got a lot of dry ice. So I would do experiments with dry ice and try to freeze things and um, just do stuff like just really getting into stuff. I was always very like hands on. I'm bored. I need to do something right now to get some kind of stimulation to cut through the rural Virginia vibe.
Amazing. And then you went to college and you studied data science and machine learning, ML, and this is pretty impressive. And you have masters in that, correct?
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't get into originally like chemistry and physics while being an engineer aren't really close to computer science at all. It's the transition happened when I was in high school. My friends would pretend to be college students, and we'd sign up for capture the flag events, cybersecurity capture the flag events, right? So you'd have some school, usually because we're from the middle of nowhere, it'd be like Radford or something like that, would set up a capture the flag event. You'd have to do all these cybersecurity challenges like cryptography, that stuff that would require a lot of math. And we would end up breaking into those and having a lot of fun doing it. And we would win first place and try to beat out the college students. And we were like 15. So that is what got me more into computer science is I want something that I could have a big impact with, but I don't threaten my backyard getting blown up or losing a finger or something like that. It's in terms of engineering, computer science is pretty tame. There isn't a whole lot to lose. So yeah, getting into college, it started, I thought I was going to be doing cybersecurity, but I ended up not liking the crowd and got much more into data science. I really liked building like just building ML models, writing scripts to try to create something out of nothing, you know?
Well, I like that. I'm obsessed with technology, but I never went to school for tech. I love it. I love hearing about it. I love understanding. I love seeing it evolve, and that's a big thing for me. And how did the transition from, ML, machine learning, data science, all of that, building a rocket science, building a rocket, a rocket in the backyard, transferred all of that to music? So how did this? Where the connection came in? You said because of a friend, but still, the passion, the mental has to be there.
Absolutely. I mean, if you want to get into music as a tech person, you have to really want it because the space is everybody wants to get into music, but not a lot of people are willing to go get through the hard part because music's like fun, right? You go through live shows. Like as a tech person, it's like fun to be in tech and music. But the reality is, it's like under the hood, it's tough. Like it's hard to get people to take you seriously. It's hard to get investment of any kind. It's hard to work with artists. They're very tough customers. So to get through the actual challenges, you got to want it really bad. And for me, it's a bit easier because most of my like friends in college weren't tech people. They were actually musicians. A lot of them were producers or EDM DJs or something, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And while it's very fun to work on big data engineering projects, like my first job out of college was at Capital One. And so I had a lot of data to play with and I could build really cool ML models. I had a lot of smart people I could interact with. At the end of the day, all the stuff I built when I went home from work is like nobody could see any of that stuff. Like nobody really cared what I was building versus when I was doing hackathons and even just building stuff for them on the side. It was a lot more fulfilling for me to be able to see I built something and now all of a sudden my friends can use it like day of. The feedback loop is much tighter. And so that was what started getting me more and more into music is, okay, if I'm just around all these producers,
Yes.
I want to build for them.
Interesting. So, how were you able to scale from being two things: music tech, a startup, and as a software engineer? So, were you focused pretty much on the other side of it, which is the tech side of it, to build it?
Say that again. Like
You got involved in a startup with a friend.
Yeah,
of yours.
absolutely.
That was the whole thing. Yes. And how did how you managed to scale it down? Getting involved in a music tech startup and also being an engineer or software developer because you the person who actually built the infrastructure for it or the platform.
Yeah, I mean it's a little wild kind of balancing all that because when I first started getting into startups, I wanted it to be like a side gig. I really liked that kind of romanticized image that people often present on Twitter of the indie dev who's working on stuff on the side. So originally that's what I thought. I was going to have my day job and I was going to have this side hustle that I was eventually just going to overtake it and make me more money. And I could go to Spain or Bali or something like that and hang out on the beaches and program music tech. That was at least the original thought process for it. But then, as I mentioned earlier, music tech is not, it's very flashy at the start, but is a lot harder than most people consider. If once you get through all the, oh, this is fun, I get to be at live shows, it's tough. And so it started to make any kind of success or any kind of progress, it would dump more and more into my time. And so scaling it basically meant taking more away from my job, eventually leaving my job just to have to be able to do this, just to move the needle for this and get some kind of progress, right? And it's also a pretty big shock for coming from a data background where I'm used to dealing with huge, like petabytes of data at Capital One. There were S3 buckets that were just egregiously large. And going from that to a startup where you quickly learn, like I think the famous Paul Graham quote is build not to scale. Like you want to build something that doesn't, counterintuitively, you want to build something that doesn't scale first and then try to make something happen from that. So figure out where the demand is in the market and then scale it, but don't try to scale before you found the demand. And that's especially true for music because there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of flashy stuff. There's a lot of people who have these big brands and they're very loud and proud. But if you take away that one person, the whole product falls apart. That'll kind of bring it a full circle. That's the kind of the TLDR is, just ended up doing that full time and then working on building stuff not to scale.
I mean, you being a software developer to organizing hackathon style remix competitions, which is really, I want to hear about that. Then creating an AI label, which is the startup.
Yeah. Have you heard of remix competitions before?
Which one? No,
Have
no,
you haven't
remix.
heard of
You
any
know,
remix competitions?
hackathons. Well, there's regular remix competition I heard of, yes,
Yep.
but hackathon style remix competition, is it kind of tech involved in it, or?
There can be. I mean, but obviously, I mean, you know what a normal hackathon is, right? Like you've seen the
Yes.
people going in.
Yeah.
I in
Correct.
Virginia, I used to organize, especially for my university. I went to college in Richmond, Virginia, and we had something called Ram Hacks, and it was the biggest hackathon in Virginia. We had nearly 500 people participate. People from all the different schools in Virginia would drive to Richmond just to participate in our hackathons. I understand, and that's where I learned most of what I know. I love hackathons. I didn't like. I always try to put the grad school stuff on paper, and that's really flashy. But to be honest, like it's really just for paper. Like the stuff I learned at hackathons is the stuff I really is what taught me how to build the needle. And at a startup, you want to build an MVP really fast and get it out to market. And hackathons are what taught me that. If anything, grad school taught me the opposite. So leaving it, I saw that there's an opportunity in music for something similar to that. And I love remix competitions in general. Audius, the company that I worked at, hosted their own remix competitions, and you would put it on their website. Audius being like a Web3 SoundCloud, and when you upload something to Audius, you can actually mark it as a remix, and so you get these like remix trees, if that makes sense. Of like, okay, here's the OG content, and then here's all the remixes of it, and the content creators could decide a winner, and I loved that. And I wanted to do an in-person one because I love in-person hackathons over online ones, so it made sense. Richmond's got a lively music scene. I was still living in Richmond at the time, and so I started organizing these things. Like set aside a weekend where I would ask a couple of like the hometown, the well-known musicians in Richmond, get samples from them, whether it be vocal samples or just like any kind of beats, any kind of samples, any kind of stems that they'd be willing to give me for free. I would bring it to. I'd find some kind of space. I'm pretty crafty, and present it to all these musicians and say, make something off of this. Either remix it somehow, take these stems, do something cool with it. It's very open ended. And at the end of the weekend, just like a hackathon, we'll present what we've created. And then decide winners and whatnot. So we try to get as many sponsors as we could and try to give out prizes and whatnot. Just like a hackathon, we would also have workshops. Like a jazz musician, there was a lot of EDM producers at the first one we ran, and a jazz musician came in and taught a workshop on how to read sheet music. And because none of the DJs or producers knew how to read sheet music. So all in all, very, very good fun. That's really what they were. It's like a lot of these guys learned how to make music extremely fast with samples that they wouldn't be able to get on their own, and I think everybody learned a lot. I loved organizing those things.
Love it. You still doing it?
Not as I'm traveled too much. I wish I could. I always kept saying, I would tell the organizing team like, "Oh yeah, we'll do one in the next couple months," and then I would travel somewhere, and then I'd be like, "Okay, the next couple months," and then I travel somewhere. So we did a few, but for now those are tabled.
Well, let's talk about the big elephant in the room, the big startup that you and your partner created, and you guys pushing, you're standing behind it, Tap.ai. Now, tell us the mission behind it and how does it empower or empowers performers and create world tours from their phone? Like, how can you create a world tour from your iPhone or your smartphone?
Heck yeah. So, I mean, that's one of my favorite taglines, right? Is that be able to create a world tour from your phone. I think how do you know if a performer's big? How do you know if an artist is big? Well,
It got me intrigued when I read it. When I read that tagline, it got me intrigued. I'm like, okay,
exactly.
I want to learn about it.
100%. It's everybody wants a world tour. Like anybody, small and big, they want a world tour. Especially if any kind of young guy is gonna want something to say. Like, look, I went and performed in all these different cities. Even just like not even a world tour in general, just being able to say that I performed in New York or I've went to several states over to go perform. Like it's a really powerful kind of visual.
Yes.
Me and Ilias and I Ilias, my co-founder, have been hacking on stuff for over a year at this point. Like even when I still had a job and we were kind of just doing stuff on the side, we knew that we wanted to build something in the music space. I have a strong music tech background. He's got an extremely strong music background and dealing with production, especially in the hip hop R&B genre. This is the space that we are meant to be in, and it makes sense for us to be here. So we have been coming up with startup ideas, products really quickly. Like I said, coming out with MVPs, just seeing where the demand's at in the space. The AI record label was one of them. But there's several different iterations on products that we would release. We'd say like, okay, this is going to be our customer. This is going to be the customer segment we're going after. This is going to be the value proposition for them. Let's get an MVB product out really quickly and let's send it out. And we must have built hundreds of these things.
Wow.
But the ones that really stuck out were the live music ones, the ones that really got any kind of traction. We would build something in a weekend and all of a sudden we'd have 500 people using it, which, now doesn't sound like a lot with the volume that we're getting. 500 people for something you built really quickly. I know from hackathons, that's a good number. Like that's an actual solid number. Yes. So we would keep kind of like survival of the fittest. We build all these products and then take the ones that got the most kind of traction and then keep iterating on them. Yeah, live music was the thing that got it, like every single time. And everybody in live music tries to build a marketplace of building bookings. There's like 10 different booking apps nowadays. But the one thing that we noticed was that none of them had any kind of good data to deal with. Like everybody's shooting in the dark. Like there's no Spotify for artists kind of level analytics or chart metric level analytics. Everybody's just shooting in the dark. So everybody's digging for gold. Like what's the saying? How's the saying go? You bake the shovels. So we started collecting as much data as we could, which is easy for me because it's like that's my whole background. I was like, okay, this is perfect.
Yeah.
So we started collecting tons and tons and tons and tons of data on bookings. I have Ilias had his own from his agency, had his own proprietary data set. I'm pretty good at building web crawlers. I had to do it for some of my master's courses and also at Cap One, and then just getting data from wherever we could get it and just being very data hungry. And what we realized is we've got a gold mine here. Like we've got a gold mine for all this data. Every time we get on a call, people are feeding to get what we have, and we have this strategy of potential products that we could use this data set for because we're like, Jesus, we have really good stuff. And the first one was, well, let's start small and let's start with something that we know is going to be a hit from data that we have from the previous products we've built. Let's just quick MVP get out a way for performers to be able to book shows in multiple cities. If we have data on venues across all of North America, we have data on who generally books there. We have all their genre data, their capacity data, everything in between. Let's make a really quick way to say, are you a performer that makes hip hop music and this is your previous booking history? Well, these are the venues that we'll recommend for you based on this massive data set that we have in the background. And we could present it to you in a very easy to understand UI, just right on a map.
So excuse me for interrupting. So for our viewers and myself and our followers, basically you have a predictive AI analytics system that forecasts where the best for them based on their followers, based on the size of network or social media presence that they have. Based on that, your AI technology platform kind of tell them where and which venues will host them based on all the information you have on them.
Yeah, which ones should they, keeping it kind of like broad, like which one should they perform at? Like, if you're trying to perform in New York, which venues should you perform at? And here's a really easy and intuitive way to reach out to them. Like based on,
let's say somebody going to travel outside of New York. Let's say you mentioned New York. I'm an artist. I'm in New York. Let's say, Virginia, where you are. I'm an artist in Virginia, and I don't have the funds to travel to bring the whole band. If I have a band with me, or I'm a solo artist, I can't. I have a job, responsibility, whatever it is. School I would find me venues that would host me locally. It's only a drive. I can drive or take the bus or public transportation to get there.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people don't tour as much as they normally would because it's too much of a risk. Like if you said you're like, I'm a musician from New York. I don't want to leave New York because if I leave New York and the show bombs, what am I going to do? That's like, I'm out of a bunch of money. That's an awful tour. Or I'm not going to drive all the way. Let's say, I hear that you could probably book a show, Austin, Texas is the live music capital of the U.S., but then as an artist in Virginia, I'm not just going to fly or drive to Austin just because I might be able to get a show. With what we're building, you're going to get a show. You're going to get a show and it's going to pay well. So you're not taking a risk. It's a much more calculated science of where am I going to go to do a show. So even if I have 500 followers, if I can prove that I can make a sufficient amount of money in Texas, then why not fly to Texas? If if it makes sense meet, right?
Does it get booked? Does it get booked also? It doesn't just tell you where you should perform or where, which venue will take you. Would it book it for you? Or doesn't? You would have to make the call yourself, or make the call, or
Well,
send an email, or whatever.
we make the intro right now because I think I mentioned this earlier. Is we made a very strategic decision that we didn't want to be a marketplace. Marketplaces
Yeah.
are very tough to build and tough to get started. To
Yeah.
get to liquidity for a marketplace is extremely hard. If you can get it, you got it. Like if you can make a marketplace work, those things are unstoppable. Like Airbnb is unstoppable,
Yes.
eBay is unstoppable. All these
Yes.
places, getting it started is tough. So we made the decision early on that we were going to not build one, or at least for now, not building a marketplace. That just inherently means that however the venue wants to book them, they're free to do so. And however they want to pay them, I'm sure payment methods for musicians are all over the place. There's some of them do percentage of ticket sales.
Yeah.
Some of them are 50-50. Some of it's 100% at the start. Some of it's 100% at the end. Some of it's like percentage of bar sales. Like they have all these different ways of paying you. So rather than trying to build out a solution for each one of those, we let them take care of it. We make the intro.
But at least you make the intro, which is great.
Yeah.
That's a big icebreaker. Interesting. Very, very interesting.
And then later down the line, we'd love to partner with somebody that does do this kind of stuff and does do the contracting and whatnot. Because we also don't do ticketing. Because again, we didn't want to build a marketplace. We didn't want to have two sides that we needed to deal with. And if we go to the ticketing, then now there's three sides because there's fans, there's artists, there's venues, and then maybe even a fourth for promoters. And like, how do you make all of those guys happy? It sucks. It's not fun. So
Tap.ai technology that you guys built, there is potential impact on the booking industry and ticket sales. I could see where this is going. I mean, this is not just where can you perform an introductory level. This is going to probably expand. That's what I see. Where is it going? As you mentioned earlier, how Uber impacted and disrupted the cab industry, how Airbnb, without owning one hotel, disrupted the hotel industry, and so forth and others. And I see this technology going that direction. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. You're the developer, you're the engineer, and
No, I mean, you know what you're talking about. You've obviously heard of like red ocean, blue ocean, and we are operating in a blue ocean. Whereas the people building out a lot of places in the music industry, everybody seems to go for the red ocean, which is in my head recorded music. It's either recorded music or artist to fan experiences. Those are very competitive red oceans. I've seen 15 different artist engagement startups, and they all do the same thing, and they're all pretty bad. Like, I'm friends with some of them, so I'd say that, hey, they do really good. They're very talented people, but I don't feel like they, in my opinion, I don't think, to be brutally honest, I just don't think they're hitting the mark. There's a million different ticketing startups right now. In recorded music, there's a million different recording music startups that are trying to make some kind of take some kind of sliver out of that. We're not operating in this competitive red ocean. We're in the nice blue ocean. There's nothing really stopping us. It's big. There aren't a lot of competitors, and we're creating our own demand. The people who join, I think my favorite metric for Tapped is that we don't get a whole lot of churn, because the people who join the app stay with it, and after the app's gone, they don't know what they were doing beforehand. Their life's completely different. And that's like my favorite. I think that's my favorite metric. Is if we took this app away from people, they wouldn't know what to do. They like beg us for it back.
Because there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it right now. Yes, you're right. There is a lot of new startup tech platforms that focuses on artists or fans. They call it now. Artist fan engagement or super fans and all of that.
Yeah.
Everybody coming up with their own thing. And everybody try to say, okay, this is what I have is what's gonna the new mark in the music business, the new thing, the new innovative thing that's gonna, take this kind of level to the front. Which is, I don't know yet. I mean, everybody has something, as you said, but nobody has had it on the market that something kind of blew up. Because
what are your deep thoughts on it? Yeah.
Well, because the whole infrastructure of the music business still there didn't change. We went from physical to digital. So we are still in the digital world. And AI, what's happening right now, I don't like to use the word disruptive, because I think any technology is not the word disruptive, it's advancement. We advance it, we're progressing, we're going forward. That's what technology does. It takes us forward. It makes things easier, empower us to do things. It makes what are we doing reach every point of this planet that we live on. Like before, it wasn't. Then digital came in, and everybody there's iPhones and smartphones, whether Android or Apple. But it made you reach the world through your technology. So technology, I'm a big fan of technology. And I think technology is a great tool for human advancement in any industry, whether it's in music, in education, in travel, anything in medical, all of that. So in your opinion, as an engineer and data science and all of that, and a developer, what do you see the most innovative advancement happening in the music industry today?
The, I think, I mean, innovative stuff. I think there's a lot of, I think the elephant in the room in terms of music tech is generative audio, like stuff that Suno AI is doing. You've heard of Suno?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
Suno
think so. Yeah.
came to our event mixer. It's like, generate songs. You could put in a prompt that says, make me a song about a cat in bluegrass or
Yeah.
something like that, and it'll make it. And it's like really, it's pretty good. It's not bad. Those kinds of things are the big elephant in the room in terms of music tech. I mean, everybody talks about them of okay, what is royalties going to look like? How they trained it. I think that's what's got everybody distracted. Everybody outside of music tech, that's what's got them distracted. And I think that is going to fundamentally change things, especially with stuff like sync licensing. With generative audio, you don't need sync licensing anymore. Like you just somebody who wants audio for a movie or for a commercial is just going to generate it with Suno. They're not going to pay an artist like tens of thousands, like 30
Yes.
grand to make something for a commercial anymore. They're
Well, the
just going to
only
make it.
thing is now is how this music been trained on, and which music, and
Yeah.
that's the only yes, that's the issue right there. But the problem is, as we said before, and you asked me what's my point, how do you see it? The problem is, as I mentioned, there's physical and digital. Technologies over here, and the music business here. It's always
Yeah.
way ahead. So now this whole AI thing, it's way ahead of the music business, and the music business trying to catch up. Some wants it to, some don't want it to catch up, but eventually it will. And all of these new things that coming up with all these startups, all these great text music startups that with all different ideas and all different approach. I think the music itself, the infrastructure has to change a little bit, advance itself. Then you'll see new ways of
Yeah.
consuming music and all of that. But it's
Yeah.
still based on the old ways, DSPs and digital streaming platforms and distributors and aggregators. Still, a lot of the old ways still run the business. But
Yeah.
now it's kind of a little bit of a shake. Like, okay, the music has to move. The business
Yeah.
itself has to move forward to catch up with technology in order for all of these new startups, a lot of these AI driven startups, whether it's tools or whatever they are, in order for this to happen, the music business has to kind of push. So there will be
Yeah.
changes happening. There will be. And I cannot put any of these new startups down because we don't know yet until things move forward,
Yeah.
as the whole infrastructure move forward. Yes.
I mean, it really, music industry. I'm thinking about it. I like your analogy for it too, because the way I've always thought about it is if you think of it like this ball, technology so far has really just affected the outside of the ball. Like it's especially the
Right.
artist to fan. Artist to fan has always been the thing that's optimized. It's the one thing like Spotify did extremely well is artist to fan is now like so optimized to the point where artists don't even make money. It's not even like it's just too optimized. Like there's no money in it anymore. But at its core, I don't think tech has really affected the music industry as much as it ought to have. I think that's changing. I think that there's finally the cracks in the music industry. Tech is starting to flow through, and it's
Yeah.
exciting. But it's also a little wild at the same time because one of the main reasons investors don't like to get into music tech is because of licensing. The legislation for music tech fundamentally or for music is awful.
Yes.
It's so bad. And there's a
Yeah.
history going all the way back to like 1700s, 1800s
Because
of,
it's the old ways. It's still the old ways. It's still the old
yeah,
ways. A lot of it, as I said, they don't want it to change because that's how
yeah.
they make money,
Mhm.
and that's how it's set up, and that's how
You,
they control it. Because technology, you think it can it make it, the old ways, they're gonna lose their grip on it.
yeah. You can track like different kinds of licensing deals to, I think the most telling example is in the 1800s, somebody made a self-playing piano. Like it was a piano. You didn't actually have to have a player. You could put it in a bar. Think of it like,
Yes.
it's like a jukebox, and
Yeah.
it would play itself. But if it plays somebody's song, who gets the music for that song? And there was this whole thing, and one artist in particular freaked out about it, and so Congress very quickly made legislation for it, really hastily. And now you have this terrible law that sits there, and what are you going to do about it? I mean, Congress isn't going to move particularly fast. Like the people in the tech community hate when you have to wait for Congress to have to do something. A lot of fundamentally what's messed up is there's so many bad laws and so much like hastily made legislation of oh shoot, we got to like, and I think it's going to happen with generative AI too.
Because of the benefit of certain certain people in control of the business. Yes.
Yeah.
But
So,
you know what? This takes me back to what you guys developed, Tapped AI,
yeah.
where, you mentioned it, you just said, right now there's no money in streaming. Artists not making money. Don't forget about major artists. They talk about independent artists. So where independent artists going to turn? Okay, their music, not every independent artist's music is being played in commercials and movies and in anything. Not everybody. Some are, but not everybody. There's a lot more not. So how can they get themselves out there beside, short content, beside TikTok, or beside, some of these social media platforms that's really helping a lot of independent artists come forward? I would say Tapped AI is actually is the main key that really going to help a lot of independent artists perform live. That's what it's all about being engaged with your audience, being engaged with your fans, and you guys are the key. Definitely Tapped AI technology, definitely a great tool and enhancement for independent artists to perform and to generate revenue and get their name out there. Yes.
Yeah. With there being no music, where else are you supposed to make money? You either, as an independent guy, you're either making it playing shows or selling merch. And where do you sell the most merch? At live shows. So you're really incentivized to get as many live shows as you can get. And even bringing it full circle, it's very fortunate that Tapped is not in a field that has all these different licensing issues and all these different, there's not a whole lot of legislation around live music. I mean, there is, and there's some state stuff, but it doesn't affect us. When I say we're in a blue ocean, we're really in we're in a part of the music industry that's just really nice to be in. And so, we're moving fast. We have the opportunity to move fast, whereas all these other startups, and even startups like I mentioned, like the fan to artist engagement ones, or the ticketing ones, or all these other guys, they pay for our data because there's so many. They start their startup, and all of a sudden there's just inherently all these obstacles ahead of them, and they want whatever they can get to get ahead of these obstacles. And there's legislative ones, there's old money guys getting in, old music heads. It's just all these obstacles. For us, we don't have any of these obstacles, and we have the data to support those guys. So we're in calls right now with tons of different, from ticketing companies to artist deferring companies to all these people that we mentioned, who are trying to get access to our API. They were like, what will it cost? Because the only other option is to pay somebody like Polestar. The only other database that's very similar to ours is Polestar, and that's Ticketmaster data, and they charge $40,000 a year for a license for data that's not that good in the first place. So we're really we're in a full sprint. There's nothing stopping us, and the artists seeing that's why we get so much people on board. Is the only way for them to make music is to play live, and we help them play live. So it's and even for somebody saying, we still have a pretty generous free tier. We're a startup. We want to encourage people to get on. We're not really in the business of let's gate it as much as we can. We have some things gated, but we really want to facilitate people getting on the app and trying things out. And so I can get the feedback to build a better product. And so even the guys who are getting on and staying on the free tier, they don't leave. They stay with us, and they're constantly looking for new shows, looking for new gigs. I have somebody, I know he's got the money, but he likes to be cheap, and he doesn't want to pay for the subscription tier that we have on the app. He just wants to know whenever he wants to play in a city. He does the research himself. He goes in our app and finds where all the venues are in the city and then calls them himself. I was like, you could just pay $10 and we'll do it for you. We could send out, we'll make the intros. That's the whole point, is we send out intros for you. And he's like, he doesn't want to pay the $10, but whatever. But it's still, he finds value in the app on the free tier. He's on it all the time, playing around, looking on the map, looking for venues, looking up all the stats on them and stuff like that. We are fundamentally changing how things are getting done.
Wow, amazing. What is some of the challenges you faced revolutionizing the live performance space with technology, and how did you overcome them?
Without a doubt, it's data, and that's how we're solving the problem, right? Is there's no easy way to get a lot of data to scale it. Like you can get
Yes.
small stuff. You could have one artist's booking history, or you can have one venue's booking history, or you might find a calendar here or there, but nobody knows who's playing where. Except for maybe Ticketmaster knows it for the people that work with them. I mean, some of these other ticketing companies like Dice, for example, has a decent amount of data. And I know the team at Dice. I've met them from New York, and they have an office in Barcelona where I lived. They got some good stuff, but at the end of the day, that's also not public. There's just a severe lack of data of what's going on and what things look like. And we're solving it by creating Tapped. We are like fundamentally under the hood. We see ourselves as a data analytics company. We take in tons, terabytes. Right now, it's still in the gigabytes, but taking it out to scale, we are going to be taking in terabytes all the way up to petabytes of data of what's going on in the music industry. Who's playing what? Who's playing where? At what frequency are they playing? What are the best times of year to play? All these other different factors. But right now, it still sucks. Like, I'm lucky that I've done this stuff before, because the code is disgusting and it's messy and it's super hacky, but it gets the job done and gets us a lot of data. We take in every day. We probably add like 50,000 new performers that we track, and around 1,000 new venues that we track of who's playing
Amazing.
at these places. We take in a lot of data, but it's hard work. It keeps I spend a lot of hours working on it, right? But that's the biggest challenge in live music, without a doubt. Which thank God there's somebody like Tapped AI solving that.
Hey, I could see somebody knocking on your door soon.
Yeah.
Big. Let me ask you. Go ahead.
No. No, that would just be rumors. You go crazy. You go crazy.
Where do you see the intersection of technology and live music heading in the next decade? And what role hope you're going to play in shaping that future?
Yeah. Do you know, have you heard of media research?
Media research.
MIDIA.
I'm not going to say I did. Maybe. Are they in Jersey?
No. I mean, I think they're technically based out of London. They do all kinds of, I mean, you know what Bloomberg is, but they basically do like Bloomberg reports for the music industry. They're awesome. Like they very comprehensive music industry reports on what does recorded music look like, what does live music look like. It's the kind of stuff that you would put on a pitch deck. I know, because I made the pitch deck and I had to use media reports to find the kind of data that we needed. And the team is also they come out to Barcelona a lot, so I got to meet up with the team. And one of the team members lives out in New York. Media research, amazing stuff. And what they have been putting, one of the reports was talking about who the kind of shows that are getting played. And I think it's no secret that rock is still very dominant in the live music space. Rock is what you go
amazing.
to see. If even though in recorded music, it's probably hip hop still, I would imagine. Like hip hop's still what most people listen to. If you were to decide between a rapper that you didn't know or a band you didn't know, you're going to pick the band. You're not going to go to, like, you'll go to the rap show if you know the rapper. You're not going to go to some random rapper because there's too much. It's way more likely they're going to flop. At least for the band, you know that, okay, they're all going to know how to play all the instruments. Like, it's going to sound, the worst thing a band is going to do, if a band sounds bad, it probably just sounds generic. Like, it might sound generic, but that's fine. You're going to the live shows to drink beers and listen to generic rock music. Versus the rapper, if the rapper bombs, And especially if you don't know them and you don't feel that kind of connection, like, rock is still the dominant genre. But what it's looking like, and we've seen this out in Europe already, and I think it's bleeding into the U.S., and especially looking at these media reports of seeing how landscapes are shifting, I think EDM is going to be the thing that overtakes rock. Rock has been dominant since the 80s, and I think EDM is finally going to unseat it as the live music. Like the biggest thing played in live music right now is going to be these EDM shows.
EDM.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now that flavor of EDM could be different, but.
Wow, I thought they were at their peak some years ago, and now it kind of went down. But hey, I mean, you in that business, so you'll understand them way better. You have the data, so
yeah. Well, I'm going off of what we see from our database, and I'm going off of a lot of what media, the kind of research that media puts out as well.
EDM,
and Yeah, the flavor of it could be different because I'm sure in Chicago it's probably going to be more house. In Detroit it's going to be more techno. In New York it seems house is still like every single show in New York seems to be a house show nowadays. Like
Wow.
you play house music and something like that.
Hmm.
But it's even starting to get down into Virginia. Like I still go down to Richmond, Virginia, pretty frequently, and while there's still a lot of rock music played, the majority of people my age go to the EDM shows that are in the city. And the thing I hear the most is them complaining about how they wish there were more EDM venues. And that the current venues would book more EDM artists. I'm seeing that stuff firsthand. I'm also seeing it in the data that EDM is still got a ways to go.
Yes, yes. In your experience, what is the most common misconceptions people have about the tech industry? And how do you believe these misconceptions impact innovation and entrepreneurship within the field?
I think, well, for one, startups. I mean, you look at like the original when startups really started to become a thing and venture capital really started to become a thing. It was these rebels, it was these rogues, it was these guys going against the curve, like just doing things a little bit different and being a little wonky. Those were the innovators, the guys moving the needles. And like most things, as that stuff kind of matures, the rebels start to get weeded out, and you start getting people who are optimizing themselves for a metric. Like they try to see what VCs are looking for, and they optimize for that metric. Versus the OG startup heads who were optimizing for any metric except I'm going to build the best thing ever, and it's going to be mine, and that kind of championship. And even the startups were always building like rebels. They were building against the status quo. Like the original Google was definitely building against the status quo. And what I see now is the industry has started to mature enough that VCs are looking for, are you an NYU, MIT, Stanford, or Harvard grad, rather than are you this rebel who's going to try to who's going to change the game. Like they want you to look good on paper versus look good in action. And I mean, I'm also extremely biased saying that, but I've seen that a lot. Is I've seen music companies with these NYU grads that get all this money and they have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea what they're doing. But you get Ilias and I in there, and Ilias and I went to Virginia Commonwealth University. Who goes to Virginia Commonwealth University? There's no Ivy League behind that. There's nothing special about Virginia Commonwealth University. Ilias and I break things, and we move fast, and we one of the type of guys that say like, okay, we'll work with our current market. Ilias and I fundamentally believe we're in the blue ocean, and the demand is we're going to create the demand. We're going to create the market. We're going to rebuild the industry. We're not trying to work in whatever guardrails have been predefined for us. We are open to do whatever we want. I've been championing that from doing cybersecurity back in the day to doing hackathons to always trying to break things and figure out very clever solutions to problems. You've met Ilias, so you know that he champions that quite a bit. Of I'm going to break things and I'm going to go as fast as I can and nobody can stop me. But I've seen a lot of other startups not championing that, but get loads and loads and loads of funding, which is very upsetting. Time is the biggest teller, so I could be completely wrong, and you fast forward 10 years, we'll see who's around in 10 years from now and who's not.
Well, I tell you one thing: you guys have something. If you don't have the funding, you have the mindset, and you have the drive and the hunger, and that, trust me, that surpass many, many, many fundings and many things. Because in the end of the day, who's gonna stand there? And if you guys still standing, and that's what I see, and that's what you guys got.
Yeah. Well, and the last thing is
question.
The thing about Google is too. I mentioned Google back in the day was they were the guys breaking things. They were guys really moving the needle forward. Like one of the things I loved about Google, and I went to, this is me showing that I have a grad degree, is I really loved like the paper on MapReduce and the story behind how they invented MapReduce. Is all these other big companies like IBM and these guys had these big mainframes, and rather than building horizontally, everything was to build vertically. We need a bigger computer, bigger computer, bigger computer. And Google didn't have a lot of money. They were still like relatively strapped for cash at the time. So they had a lot of servers. They had a lot of computers, but they didn't have very powerful ones. And they created this framework to do massive data wrangling and manipulation jobs with all these commodity computers, commodity servers that they had at the time, rather than having to buy the biggest, mainframe ever. And they champion this of, look, humans evolve for scarcity, not surplus. We live in a scarce environment and we're going to work around it. Versus now you see like Google Fiber. Google Fiber had the chance to be its own thing, to really unseat AT&T and Verizon and change the game. But now Google Fiber works with AT&T and Verizon, and there's more of this, let's work in the existing ecosystem, let's partner, let's do this, rather than screw AT&T and Verizon, we're building our own thing and you can't stop us. They don't do that anymore. Google's kind of lost its sauce. Like looking at it as AI now, who are the biggest AI companies? They're the ones who can get their hands on that NVIDIA chip, that $40,000, like those big NVIDIA chips. And that makes thinking of the analogy of the mainframe. You were only a big tech company if you could get a mainframe. Who's going to be the scrappy engineer that's going to create MapReduce, but for commodity GPUs? That'll be the thing to see. Exactly, because humans evolve for scarcity, not surplus. If you put yourself in a situation like Google, where you have all this cash and you don't know what to do with it, you're not going to innovate as fast as you want. It's me and Ilya strapped for cash that are going to be the ones who are going to do something clever that you didn't expect. Fundamentally, these hacker guys, right?
Yes. And, that would lead me to my next question is, for our listeners and our viewers, who's going to be inspired by you, by your drive, by your energy, by your motivation, by your story, and say, hey, if he did it, how can I do it? I could do it, what I need. So what's your advice to some of these people going to be inspired by your story and your vision and your motivation and drive?
Yeah. Well, one of the saddest metrics I've heard, and I hate that the NVIDIA CEO even said this, is there's no point in learning how to program anymore. Because I think Ilias has learned this, because I'm not some programmer that Ilias contracted $30,000 to go build him an app. Like, I'm a technical co-founder. We're co-founders in this. And I bring a lot more to the table than just I know how to program. Like, there's more to being a technical co-founder than just I can actually build the thing. I mean, that's nice, but there's a lot more that goes into it. So you wouldn't know that unless you got your hands dirty and started building something. Like, if you look at Ilias versus some of the guys who, I'm biased, but I they're not as scrappy as Ilias. They're not as good at marketing as Ilias, but they're kind of like analogous to him to an extent. Like, they work in the music industry. They have all these connections, all this knowledge. They end up contracting somebody to make an app, but they don't learn the things that Ilias has learned by working with me. Like, Ilias knows how to build an app better than them, even if he can't actually program the code. Again, you're not going to know that unless you get your hands dirty and you do it. So my advice is get your hands dirty and do it. Go to the most stuff I learned was hackathons. Like, I got into hackathons, I built stuff. My GitHub looks crazy. I think I have over 100 repos on GitHub of me just building something and trying to solve it and doing it fast and just, trying to make something happen. And I think Ilias is done similar stuff with the music industry of take these risks and try it. And especially for young people, what I tell them, I'm still a young person, is it doesn't matter if you don't have cash or anything. As a young guy, you have a very large reserve for risk, and you have a bigger reserve for risk than most people. And you should use that risk to your advantage. A startup has less cash than Google, but I can take a lot more risk than Google could do. And I think that's more powerful. So take the risk, do the things, build stuff, and lose as much as you can and fail as fast as you can. But you're not going to learn anything I hate the people who say, like, oh, I have this startup idea, but I'll wait until the time's right, because the time's never going to be right. You just have to do it. You have to always jump off that cliff.
That's it. Yes, absolutely. Well, you heard it first. Entrepreneurs in tech. You heard it first right here. Anything that you want to tell the audience or listeners or viewers that you coming up with on Tapped AI that to look forward to next month or something, a new function or new thing that's you want to advertise or mention or plug in?
We announced a couple weeks ago that we have a model in beta right now, an ML model for generating an entire tour from for a performer. With a click of a button, it'll tell you what cities you should go to. It'll give you an estimate on the number of revenue you'll make from the tour, the amount of fans you'll reach, how long the tour will take, so on and so forth. It's very much so in beta, so we are looking for engineers right now. We're looking for people who are really good in data science, pros if you have a machine learning background, just people who are willing to get their hands dirty and work with very ugly, messy data, because we're a startup and we have a lot, but I'm the only guy that cleans it right now. So, you do your best. So somebody who's scrappy but likes working with tons of data and likes to try to make something out of nothing.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining us today on Innovate Presents Entrepreneurs in Tech. And we hope you found today's insight inspiring and insightful. Be sure to connect with us on social and stay informed and about our upcoming episodes on this new Innovate Presents Entrepreneurs in Tech. Thank you again. Till next time. And we appreciate your time. And thank you very much.
Thank you. This is great.
My pleasure. Absolutely.